It is Locked On Jazz for the 28th of September. Absolutely amazing to see all the guys again. We'll talk about my two biggest takeaways from seeing all the players and talking to them yesterday. The three new guys you want to know about and what they were like. And then Craig Bolerjack comes by to share his experiences and his thoughts from Media Day. It's all coming up on today's edition of Locked On Jazz. Ba-dum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum. Pow!
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, it's David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where you can follow us at Locked On Jazz. What an awesome day! What an awesome day yesterday. I got to sit down. We were the big group and talk to all of the Jazz players and have media day. And on Sunday, we go on the road and we get back to this job as it should be done, with just such a pleasure to bring the games to you, to see the players. I mean, really, truly, we had not seen and talked to most of these players. There have been a few exceptions. I'd been over at practice the other day or open gym the other day and saw Mike and Joe for a second. I had seen George Niang during the season for a minute last year. He was obviously not with us anymore, but legitimately had not sat, talked, interacted with most of these guys since March, somewhere in that March window of 2020. The last time we were all together was in an airport hangar at March 12th as we'd come back. The last time we kind of got ready for on a game and saw each other kind of in that just general interaction when you're walking around the hotel together, you're getting on buses together, you're heading to the arena together, March 11th. March 10th was the last time we kind of, crazy. It was such an uplifting experience. I'm really kind of deep and philosophical about it a little bit today on just what I felt yesterday. We've all learned how to live this new life. We've all tried, right? Like Holly Rowe, who, gosh, she was fabulous yesterday. What an incredible addition to this team. Bowler was amazing. Everyone was great too. That was the other part, working with the crew and how great everybody was. Ron and Thurl with great questions that only they could ask. Bowler with just such good big picture awesomeness. You'll hear, I keep referencing the questions Bowler asked the other day, and Holly was amazing. So really cool. Just a great crew. I mean, we had a big crew in there. There's really talented. You've seen those pictures. The Jazz have just put together from everyone involved, from Nao to there's the whole crew. Anyway, sorry, I'm kind of just so geeked up still this morning about it. Craig will join us here in a second. So let me get into the, here's my deep philosophical thought. It was an amazing feeling to come back to doing something we did pre-pandemic. It really was an uplifting, amazing experience. I figured out how to kind of do it. I really detested calling games from the studio, but I had figured out the rest of my life. I was healthier. I slept more. I skied more. I figured out the ways to turn that into a positive. I think it's what we've been trying all to do, is to turn our lives into the areas that have been taken from us, to still find a way to be positive. But when you taste and feel and touch what I truly love as much as anything in the world, which is covering an NBA season and bringing you the action and sharing with you about the guys and learning about them, and I'm mesmerized by their genius and their brilliance. And to be around that all the time and be able to relay it to you and then share the wins and losses with you. We were able to share the wins and losses last year, but I never felt the connection that I even feel today to this group. It was so great. I mean, a conversation with Joe, just not even in our interview session, just talking to him for a while about the kids and how, his daughter's doing what she's like, and she's into swimming, and his excitement when he talked about just those, and then to be able to share that with you, that you can feel that. So great. All right, let's get to it. Here are my two biggest takeaways from the day. And as a Jazz fan, maybe you don't feel this. I thought there was going to be a lot of residual pain left from the Clipper series. I thought there was a lot of healing that was going to have to take place. I thought there was a lot of disappointment. I thought there might be a lack of faith in themselves. I thought this group could have had some real doubt some pain, some scars, and some doubt. I didn't feel any of that yesterday. I was really, really surprised, honestly, in what an incredible positive mindset these guys were in. I really they did not talk about that much. They certainly the loss to the Clippers came up, but there wasn't a bitterness toward it. There was a little bit of a what if, but even they kind of stayed away from that on the health issue. Um, I was just, and they, it's abundantly clear, like they're together again as a group to win a championship. And I think the fact that Milwaukee, who had failed twice on their run to the championship, is helpful to them. And I think Bowler and I talk about this as well. I just got the vibe that they looked at Milwaukee and they're like, all right, well, they had the best record in the NBA basically twice, and they didn't get it done twice, and they got it the third time. Let's keep going. And that was kind of the overall energy that I got from the group, which I thought was really encouraging, because I did think, and you've probably felt it in a little bit of my commentary coming into this season, that I thought there was a real repair job that had to be done. And frankly, there still may be. And it's why going to Vegas for 3 days is kind of away from everyone else and being yourself. And Boyan told us that they're going to do 3 team dinners, and that on a lot of other teams, you do that team dinner, and some of the guys show and some of them don't. But for this group, they'll do 3 team dinners. They'll have lunch together every day. They'll probably have breakfast together every day. They're almost recreating the bond they built in the bubble. This team was rebuilt with some really smart stuff in the bubble back in Orlando. If this team ever wins a championship, even if it doesn't, the story of this team goes back to the bubble. The COVID night in Oklahoma City, the rebuild of the franchise in the bubble, discovering who they were without Boyan, and then having, and remember, the amount of time that they had Clarkson and Boyan together was so limited, right? It was really basically January 1 to March 11th. And then they didn't really know, as Donovan shared with us yesterday, didn't really know who they were as a team. And they discovered who they were as a team last year. So now they're like, okay, we know who we are. This is what we got done. Let's go do it again. Very impressed in that regard. All right, there's 3 players I think you really, really wanted to know who they were and what they were like. Let's start with the rookie, Jarod Butler. Super impressive young man. He walked in the room. He shook hands with everyone. He's very self-confident in who he is. He's very polite. He's a Christian, and that's a very important thing to him. He and Holly talked about joy, which is a Baylor phrase that they had. Jesus, I think, over yourself was, I think, what joy stood for, which was, a very interesting kind of insight. Let me see if I can find that note I have on him. I have a lot of notes on a lot of players. We're going to go through kind of each player. Yes. I think it's Jesus, others over yourself, maybe, or Jesus, I think is what it is. I thought he was really interesting. He talked about how his journeys had bumps and curves, but not mountains. I thought that was a really interesting perspective for a young kid. Like, hey, I haven't had it that tough, but I've had some bumps. I've had some curves. I didn't get recruited right away. A lot of these kids, younger kids, had not been recruited. Like, there was a really interesting kind of aspect of who the Jazz have added to this roster. Some guys that can handle some adversity. And, I think, the other thing that Jarod Butler talked a lot about, he talked about Uno. JP Chunga did a nice job getting him to talk about his Uno games with Maceo Teague. And then, he says, hey, I won 3 state championships. I won a national championship. I just win. So that was interesting. I do think it's going to be hard for him. I mean, it's just so hard for rookies. Rudy Gay was just an obvious veteran. He was such a pleasure. He was with us for a long time. The conversation was kind of short early. It was interesting. I asked him in a really bad question. I kind of screwed it up to open our session. We were in a big group, but I screwed up the first question. Luckily, we recovered. So thank you to everybody. I just was talking. I tried to find feature articles about him and actually couldn't find them because the Hartford Courant, you actually don't have the archives back from when he was at Connecticut, and the Memphis Commercial Appeal, when there would have been feature articles written on him, is got a paywall. I think that's the order it was. And so anyway, I asked him, like, well, how would you write your story? He's like, my story's not written. And I thought that was really interesting. Here was this guy who, like, clearly is at the back end of his career, but he's like seeing himself as a vision toward the future and becoming someone and learning that. Holly asked him about a picture they'd seen with Richard Branson. And he's like, I want to be in those conversations. I want to be in those rooms. I want to be around those people. So there was a maturity to him and who he is. And we talked a lot about, he's learning how to star in his own role. And that sure, he averaged 20 at one point in time. Then he had the Achilles, came to the Spurs, and now he's learning how to play a different way. He's big too, by the way, super big. Like I don't think he's that different a size than Derek Favors. Like he's a big dude. So he was really interesting and talked about working with Donovan and teaching Donovan. And then he talked about enjoying the grind. And then the last one was Hassan Whiteside, who was just delightful. I texted one of his former coaches who I know well in the league and asked, hey, what's he like? And he said his teammates enjoy him. And I was like, you know what? After spending that, I'm certain that's true. The most eye-opening part about Hassan Whiteside was he talked about getting COVID last year and then not being able to breathe for months on end. And really how much like the first time he played 48 seconds into the game, he asked to come out, that he couldn't breathe. And, Jason Tatum had talked about the inhaler and those kind of things. So he thinks then he was just blown away in his opening 2 weeks with the Jazz on how player-oriented everything was. Can I help you with this? Can I help you with that? Really, really wildly impressed by all of that. And then told a crazy story about Donovan Mitchell at Topgolf hitting the ball over the fence on the other side of at Topgolf. Crazy story. But really, he was delightful. He's big into koi fish and calls his koi fish OGs. A bunch of Jazz fans already on Instagram and Twitter have already picked up on that and are commenting on it all the time. So he was delightful and interesting. And I think he's the one who can really help this team the most. All right, here's what we're going to do for about we got training camp and stories, but there's not going to be a lot of news coming out of things. We'll talk about it as it goes on. This is the week. Then Sunday, we jump on a plane. We go play San Antonio, so that'll be fun. And then Wednesday, we play Dallas. We'll have 2 games to look at there. We'll look a lot around the league this week, and we'll go back through these player interviews, both their media sessions they held, as well as the one-on-ones with us, and I'll share with you. I do have some sound on some of those that we'll share. So that's the plan for the week. We will be back to 5 days a week. I apologize I didn't get to you yesterday. I had a 6:25 departure from the house, actually 6:10 departure from the house, and just didn't have a way to get the pod out. All right. Little long show today because Bowler and I are going to go long. Super fun to have Craig coming up next. This is Locked On Jazz. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. # first listen, Locked On Jazz. Locked On Fantasy Basketball is doing amazing stuff to get you ready for the season. Today's show is brought to you by my friends over at Murdoch Chevy, located in Woods Cross and in Logan. The Murdoch family is doing amazing things in Utah for the last 80 years. And if you want to know their dedication to Utah, it's as clear that they are not putting anything over MSRP. Right now, with the car shortage and all the chips and the chip shortage shipments and having a hard time getting stock, most dealerships are adding on top and gouging you for pricing, and the Murdochs are saying they won't do it. I talked to Blake. He just simply said, I'm not going to church with a bunch of people. I'm not going to be walking through the grocery store with a bunch of people in this community when I've gouged them on pricing. That's not who we are, and that's not what we're going to do. So Murdoch Chevy has got that going on right now. They've got selling all the cars for you. They have got great SUV lineup that I don't know people know about as well. We know about the Colorado. We know about the Chevrolet. We know about the Tahoe and the amazing Suburban that are kind of staples, Utah assault vehicles. The Trailblazer, the Blazer, the Traverse, the Equinox, and the Trax fill out that lineup. And then you've got the Corvette if you want to soup yourself up a little bit. As you're getting ready for the winter, the end of the year, those truck deals are available for you with the Colorado and the Silverado. It's all at Murdoch Chevy, located in Logan and in Wood Cross. You're welcome to email me. I'll set you up with a meeting there as well. Today's show is also brought to you by the Sleeper app, fantasy basketball done right. In 2018, the experts at Sleeper realized fantasy basketball is broken games were being won and lost based on how many games teams played. So in 2020, Sleeper released a brand new way to play fantasy basketball. It's called Game Pick, and it's only available in Sleeper. And Game Pick, owners pick a single game per week, and each starter counts toward their team's total score, ensuring an even number of games played. So pick it based on matchups and home versus away. And if you're having Rudy Gobert going up against you, you want no part of that player. So get it. They've cracked fantasy basketball and made it a lot better. So jump out and grab the Sleeper app and select Game Picks and get it going. Here's Craig Bolerjack. KC Bowler, yes, baby. Buckle Up Bowler on Twitter. Send him a thank you at Buckle Up. It's not the summer interview series anymore. It's just the Craig Bolerjack's joining me because we both are still dressed up from hanging out with the players. We saw the Jazz players today for the first time since March 12th, when we got on a plane with them from Oklahoma City back to Salt Lake City. We haven't seen another player since the hangar when we were talking with Angela Dunn about what we were supposed to do next. Little did we know that Angela Dunn was like a rock star. And little did we know we would not see another player until September 27th of 2021. And I think both Craig and I are completely geeked up and fired up right now because today was so much fun.
David, it felt semi-normal, even though we wore masks with the interviews with all the players. It just had a totally different feel of like doing our job the way that you and I have been taught to do it, and that is to face-to-face individually have a conversation, an up-close convo about real life, about basketball. And that's what I enjoyed a lot today, was the fact that we went away from basketball a little bit and actually had a chance to talk about their lives, our lives, and the impact of what the last 19 months have been about.
I just shared with the audience what my biggest takeaway was in the first segment of the show. So before I lead the conversation, what did you leave the room kind of feeling about we talked to every player, so all the well-known guys and then some of the guys you don't know as well, but was there any overriding vibe, energy, feeling you got from the guys, Craig?
I think there was a pure feeling of good to see you, honestly. Sometimes in the media they go, oh, not again. We did this last night. I think there was a real renewed energy of just talking face to face. Didn't you feel that? And I really sensed at the same time, too, an excitement to be back, actually playing just before they boarded a flight to Las Vegas to have their 3 days of kumbaya, to mold who they are. And I think to kind of talk about what happened in round 2 and to get on the floor a little bit before they come back for a couple of scrimmages this weekend and then heading back out for the preseason. But I just sensed a feeling that they felt normal for the first time in a very long time. And they were happy to talk. They were happy to talk about their experiences, their off season, and some of their goals that lie ahead.
It's interesting. One of the things you bring up there that I thought that I kind of shared earlier was I think Milwaukee winning the championship has been really good for Utah. A team that failed in 2 other attempts to get there with the best record in the league. Like there didn't seem to be this kind of feeling of like, well, we really, last year was a failure. That vibe wasn't there at all. In fact, Jordan Clarkson was kind of like, whoa, no, like this is part of the process. Like you have to get the 1 seed and try to go get it again because that's part of the process, and literally referenced Milwaukee. I thought the fact the Bucks won the title might be really healthy for this group.
No, I totally agree. That's a great point. I was surprised maybe that Clarkson did mention what you just talked about, was that, look, we are going to focus on the regular season. It is part of the process. We were proud of having the best record in the NBA. And it's not about, just the playoffs, but no, it's about the regular season builds you to that point. And I was expecting maybe more players to say, you know what, we just got to stay healthy and we'll see, then take it into another level in the postseason. I think especially Clarkson and others were very proud of their accomplishments during the regular season. And then, as you mentioned, the Bucks kept coming up in multiple conversation with multiple players to understand that maybe this is just simply the process of being denied and then the hunger that still remains. I felt that was a common thread today, that the focus was purely on the big step, the next step. And they didn't really talk about what ifs. I think I asked, it was Donovan or Rudy, the what ifs. I mean, fans have talked about what if Donovan and Mike were healthy. But you know what? They didn't play on that much. It was basically the fact, we saw what the Bucks did. It's a process, and we're right in the middle of getting there.
You led us down an interesting road with Mike Conley. I had planned to ask Mike Conley about the fact that Dallas and New York had money. And that for the first time, and probably the only time in his career, he had a real chance to go play for a major market and experience being in a huge market. I didn't even get to it. Like his answer to your question about kind of, for those who don't know, what we did is we were in our whole broadcast group. So kind of going around the room was JP Chunga, myself, Thurl, Ron Boone, Holly Rowe, Craig Bolerjack. Who was to your left? Jeremy Brunner was to your.
Yeah, our producer director Jeremy Brunner, and then Travis, and we have a new writer aboard too on UtahJazz.com who was in with us as well. And then Mike missed it, but he came in a little bit later. But yeah,
and then 11 was there as well. So we were all in just a big group. It looked like an inquisition to the players, actually, probably when they walked in, but they actually were very comfortable and polite. But to that, so just so everybody understands, like we were all in a group asking questions. Conley, like just kind of you got the answer. I'm like, no, this group's special. I got a spot here. Like I thought I was going into. He even said to you, I thought I was going into free agency. It's almost like he was eager about it, and then it didn't really pan out. And if you actually go back and remember his exit interview, Andy Larson made this point earlier in the week, like he didn't commit at all in his exit interview. And frankly, Dennis Lindsay didn't commit to him at all in his exit interview. And yet here was Mike like, well, once it got started, I knew I was coming back.
You know, I tell you while you were talking, I reached over here and grabbed, my notebook, because today for 6 hours we sat all together. And we had incredible notes, just incredible sentences and notations. But this is what I wrote for Mike Conley when I asked him that question, David. No better place to continue the goal of winning an NBA championship. That's why he signed. I think also there's something else too here. I think he also made mention, and we play on this some, and I think I've always looked for holes in this theory of camaraderie, team concept, locker room, tight, togetherness. But I tell you, I'm still, after all these last 3 years with Mike and Donovan's growth, Rudy and Joe, it's true. He even made the mention that Joe wouldn't let him leave because their kids go to school together. I think they're sharing life's moments together as well. And as strange as that may seem, David, that is part of why this Jazz team is so close. There's a mix of veterans that are living the same type of life now. There are some young players that look up to them. They've made some additions that seem to fit. Now, look, that could change. Obviously, Jeff Green comes to mind. But you still roll the dice and see what pieces do come together. But the core of this group is still the same. And their life experiences, I think, still play a factor in re-signing for Mike, re-signing Jordan Clarkson. He wants to be here, and I think that's a telling sign of where the Jazz are and where they're going.
There were two stories that the players shared with us that jumped out to me. One was Mike Conley. You just alluded to it. Mike Conley talking about he and Joe Ingles dropping the kids off at school together. It being like 7 o'clock this morning, both of them just looking at each other like, "Hey,
see you later." Yeah. Hey, how you doing? Yeah, it's 7 o'clock. I'm beat, but I'll be at the arena by 8. And you know what? That's special. That just doesn't happen. You know, the two guys have kids who play soccer together, and they drop their kids off at the same school with a lunch pail in their hand. I don't know if that's the case, but that's what I kind of, visualize. See a pops, and then Mike and Joe look over with a cup of Joe. No pun intended, but they know they got to go to work, and they enjoy working together and have the same goals in mind.
Maybe also the other comment, I think, again, to one of your questions, was Joe Ingles saying that by getting an Olympic medal for Australia, which they'd never had before, has cleared his mind in a way that he didn't really realize. That what a burden that, not in a negative way, but just that, time was running out, and like Australia had never had a medal before.
No.
And that was the one and only kind of goal left in his career, and that now he feels really refreshed and loosened and kind of relaxed by having accomplished that.
Yeah. Can you imagine that, though? The Boomers, he's been with those guys. This is like their 12th year that he's been involved with the Boomers. And as he said, it feels like he just took pressure out of one side of his brain to say, you know what? We did it. I helped them as a country to finally get a taste of Olympic glory. A bronze, Rudy, a silver. The U.S. wins gold. And, we kind of sit back sometimes and forget how international the Jazz are. And I think we understand now, David, more than ever, that this team is like many other teams in the league, but the Jazz were kind of in the forefront of forming the Karolinkos, the Russian connection, and now you got Bogey, Croatia, and it goes on and on. We've had in Turkey with then Memo at one point in time. It's been a very international savvy roster for a long time, and to see these guys win medals, I think is incredible to see, and you could feel the pride Joe had this morning. He was probably the most interactive he's been in a while, but we haven't seen him much, right? It was fun to talk to Joe, actually. And Rudy, you could tell, too, even though they won silver, you could tell, yeah, it was great, but maybe he has higher, loftier goals in the future. But for Joe, this long road of trying to bring back an Olympic medal to Australia, that he's a legend. He's a rock star. And to help Australia win a bronze medal in the Olympics, I mean, Joe, if there's a Walk of Fame or a Hall of Fame in Australia, knock on the door, he's in.
He's Craig Bolerjack, TV voice of the Jazz, along with Thurl Bailey this year and Holly Rowe on the revamped Jazz broadcast crew that will be amazing. We're going to talk more about Rudy, little Boyan, little Donovan, comments of that, Jordan Clarkson's cool as a cat, and the other story that was told to us that makes that I laughed about. I'll share that with you coming up. We got a little truth serum from Hassan Whiteside and Royce O'Neal that I'll share as we continue with Craig Bolerjack here on Locked On Jazz. Thanks so much for making us the first listen of your day. We're here for you each and every day. Remember, Locked On Fantasy Basketball is getting ready for the fantasy basketball season when you need your second listen today. Yesterday was just amazing. I hope you're feeling the energy with Bowler and I in the conversation. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Sweat Block. It's what I used yesterday. Big day, going to be around a lot of time, interviews, all that. So what I do the night before, I threw on my Sweat Block. And did I get the dry shirt guarantee? You bet I did. The best-selling antiperspirant on Amazon right now with over 13,000 reviews. It's doctor created and doctor recommended. It's Sweat Block. Some of you may know that, I speak publicly, and it came like yesterday. I knew it was going to be a long day. I didn't want to sweat through my shirt and have that embarrassing thing for the rest of the day. So I went to Sweat Block. Other people have excessive sweating. Sometimes for big events, a homecoming, a date, something like that. For the kids in the house, Sweat Block is stronger and more effective than most clinical antiperspirants. You simply apply it the night before bedtime and go to bed. The next morning, you wake up, wash, and go about your day without worrying about it. Guaranteed. Sounds too good to be true, but I can attest. No more pitting out. No more picking up your shirts based on which one doesn't have the sweat stains or which one won't show. Go to sweatblock.com. Use the promo code LOCKEDON and get 20% off. It's Sweatblock at sweatblock.com. Promo code LOCKEDON gets you 20% off. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Built Bar. What's the latest that Built Bar's got up the cookie dough? Did I bury a Built Bar yesterday in the middle? Absolutely. Today, the new one is Cherry Lime. Interesting. 100% real chocolate, 100% delicious. Plus, they've got the Built Puffs, mint marshmallow and coconut marshmallow available. Plus, orange is currently sold out. But peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, coconut, mint brownie, salted caramel, raspberry, double chocolate, cookies and cream, cherry barcia are all available. And the brand new Cherry Lime. Super interesting. Go to Locked, use Locked15 as your promo code. Get 15% off when you get your Built Bars with only 130 calories, 2.5 fat grams, 4 net carbs, 4 sugars, and 17 grams of protein. Feels like it's too good to be true? It's not. It's a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. It's Built Bar Plus. Special deal, all Built Bites. Shop now while supplies last for Built Bites, the little tiny Built Bars to give you a bounce when you need it during the day and you don't want a whole one. 100% real chocolate, 100% delicious. It's Built Bar. All right, we wrap it up with Craig Bolerjack. More with the fabulous Craig Bolerjack here on Locked On Jazz. So both of my other twos are out of Jarod Butler. We're asking about Jarod Butler. He's the only new piece of the puzzle, right? So we kind of want to know. I thought there were two funny stories. One, you asked Royce O'Neal. I think you asked it to Royce O'Neal and said, hey, what do you think Jarod Butler's going to be able to do? And Royce was kind of just gave you this answer of dude, the NBA is hard.
Yeah.
He's a good player. He's nice, but the NBA is hard. And the other was Hassan Whiteside was telling us about playing with Mike Conley and how Butler went under on the pick and roll on the pick, and Conley stepped back and buried a three and opened Jim, and then he went back and did it again, and he went under again, and he buried a three, and then back again, buried a three, and Hassan was looking at him like, kid, you can't go under in the NBA. You cannot go under in the NBA.
You know, I tell you, I'm really glad we had a chance to talk to Hassan Whiteside. He was the one player that I was really intrigued of getting to know today, and I was impressed, David. Honestly, you asked, I thought, a very strong, pertinent question about what Hassan Whiteside is coming to Utah, by the way, and I loved it. And you know what? He took it with grace and professionalism, and he says, "Oh, it's the Portland Hassan Whiteside," you know. But I think, you know, he could be a huge difference maker. You know, you're the numbers guy, and we know that. And your numbers, you know, were, if I'm not mistaken, number 1 in the league with Rudy, but 26th with him off the floor defensively. Think of Hassan Whiteside, another 7-footer with a wingspan an inch shorter than Gobert. And if he can be as dominant as we think he can and help solidify the second unit, I'm excited. And also, I think he brings a little offensive prowess as well that maybe changes up his game's different than Gobert's, of course. But it's exciting to think what could be. Now, look, it's going to take time, maybe 10, 15 games to kind of get a good feel for what this team will be. But the Hassan Whiteside pickup is really intriguing. Jarod Butler still intrigues me despite maybe his size. He is a very confident player. Did you get that this morning as well?
He's very polished. He's a
very polished.
Young man.
And you know what? He failed. There's no weakness in his game. He can shoot off the dribble, catch and shoot three. He likes his defensive abilities as well, leadership. And when you're coming off a national championship, it's hard to argue. But you know what? Your point is, I made the point, as you said to Royce, about most experts who like to call themselves NBA experts believe he was one of the most polished guys in the draft, despite the fact he fell because of some health concern. But he may be able to be one of the quicker players to step in and help a franchise. And then Royce's comment, as you mentioned, was, yeah, right. It's a tough transition. I don't care if he went to Baylor or not, right? It's a tough transition.
The other on Hassan Whiteside, by the way, like just the simplest things when you see these guys in person, and actually even in contrast to Doke, who's huge, Udoka, but Hassan Whiteside's way bigger than Udoka Azubuike. Like I think he might be 3 inches taller. Like I don't know Udoka Azubuike is really measuring at, but I think Hassan Whiteside is 3 to 4 inches taller than Derek Favors.
Easily. And I tell you what, too, he's a big man who is athletic. And I thought he came in looking very prepared to play a season in the NBA with the Utah Jazz or beyond. But I was impressed. You know, you can tell some guys who are going to get in shape a little bit with camp and a few preseason games. But Hassan Whiteside to me looked cut, and Rudy looked good too. By the way, we see his workout videos all the time. He's got an 8-pack going. That's Rudy Gobert. He's proud of that, by the way, too. But Hassan looked like he was ready to go, and I applaud that. Let's see how it translates on the floor.
Let's talk about Rudy and Donovan because we can talk about all these other things, but frankly, that's what matters. What was your takeaway from? Let's start with Rudy Gobert. What was your takeaway from talking to Rudy Gobert today?
Maturity, growing into his body even more. The way Holly Rowe asked him a great question, I thought about the confidence he showed and the leadership he showed and the offensive, let's just say his offensive game that showed in the Olympics. And is that going to be something we see this season? Is it going to work? Is a jump shot in the future? Facing the basket. I thought he was honest. I thought he also was engaged in talking to us again. And it's been a long, long time. He laughed. He had a smile on his face. And I just thought maturity. I thought comfort. I thought belonging. I didn't sense doubt. That's what I saw. What did you feel?
I thought there was you mentioned earlier, the one that took me away is he wasn't that like he was happy they got a silver medal. It was his first time in 20 years, but you could tell his fire is just so unbelievable that like he's like, well, I'm trying to figure out how we're getting the gold, like which seems like a crazy concept beating the U.S. He didn't say that out loud, but it was like clear. The other one I thought was really interesting about him, like everyone wants to set limits on me on what I can do, and I'm just not willing to have limits set on me. And I thought that was interesting. I'd have to go back and listen. I did kind of get the overall vibe that I just thought he was very comfortable. He seemed more mature, even just standing next to him. He just seemed older, and he didn't seem baby-faced at all.
Got a little hair going. The old razor blade lightning bolt is gone. You're right. I think just maturity. He is a pro. He's a seasoned veteran. He's a 3-time NBA Defensive Player of the Year and a 2-time All-Star. And he's a silver medalist. And you know what, David? The other thought for me was, look, you accomplished all these things, but he always talks about home. He always talks about what his mom and how close they are and what they went through. And don't forget, he wears 27 for a reason, to remind him where he was in the draft. And I still don't think he's satisfied. And that's a beautiful thing if you're a Jazz fan. He can win all these medals, all these trophies, but I don't think Rudy Gobert will be satisfied. A championship may soften him some, but I think it just continues to drive him. He has something to continue to prove because there are multiple doubters that he's one-dimensional. And I think that's the one thing that bothers him the most is that he knows he has more to give and he wants to give it. And I think we've all lived it and we're watching him give it a little bit at a time. What we saw in the Olympics, I thought he was a dominant player. I thought he looked like he totally was in charge. And I'm anxious to see if that translates, especially on the offensive end, if he can improve with the offensive game.
He had some interesting comments in regards to, he had the confidence and the faith. And so I think we're going to, Quinn created the high pass for him 2 years ago in the league that took it away. And now Quinn's going to have to figure out what the next version is, but they have to figure out how to deal with 1 through 5 switching. And the best way to do it is Rudy going down to the bottom post and packing on someone if he can be strong enough to do it. So
that base, that's a great point. Holly talked about his feet. I mean, he does on defense, jumps out and recovers as well as anybody in the league. But again, I've always wondered, how's his base and does he get knocked off the block? As we've talked about, you and I, on multiple times on those plane trips, but can he turn around and face up the basket and keep his base without getting knocked out, getting knocked off his spot? So, he's not the biggest trunk in the NBA. Standing alongside Hassan Whiteside, I was looking at Whiteside's just got a body. I mean, from top to bottom. Rudy's built himself up from the waist up and still trying to get stronger down below. But I still think that's the one thing I'm anxious to see, if Rudy's stronger in the lower legs, and can he hold his own and peel off and turn and pop a shot over an outstretched hand. It shouldn't be. If he keeps the ball high, David, come on, who's going to block that shot, right? And if he finds some confidence like he did in the Olympics, wow, another piece for the Jazz that can be used when needed.
I just want him to step by people and dunk. I don't need him to ever shoot outside 5 feet. Just step in front and dunk. What do you think of Donovan today?
Oh man, cool, calm, confident. You asked the question about 5 years in. He's 25 now. And we watched him that night when Rodney Hood couldn't answer the bell on opening night, and Donovan Mitchell was fumbling to get his sweats off to make his first NBA start. And he told us what? I didn't even know what the hell the play was. And I thought that was just something we never knew. He said he was in another land at the time, which I can totally understand, right? But man, he's come a long way. But I still sense an incredible hunger. I don't think that, does the league change you? And you talked about Griffey Jr. in baseball. And, living up to a father is a difficult thing. Donovan was well raised. Dad still works for the Mets. Mother just retired as a high-level educator. But Donovan is special. And I think it even showed more today when we talked about leadership. He said, no, look, I want to be yelled at too. I want to be cussed at. I want to be brought down to earth. We're all on this together. Yeah, I consider it my team, which I think is a good thing, but he hasn't shut out anyone to say, it's my way or the highway. And I think that's real special when you get a leader who actually sits back and takes input, right, and channels it the right way to make himself better. He's more mature than for his age, and that's why he's special. Plus, he's a damn good basketball player.
He's a special kid. There's no question about it. Well, Craig, that was fun today to do that. I hope everyone's enjoyed this conversation. Training camp this week. We figured out how to do this. This is pretty easy. We'll have to do this more often.
Hey, man, I'd say your technology, by the way, this is jazzy stuff. No pun intended. Locked On Jazz. Look at this. I feel like, this is more than big time, D-Lock. I mean, I feel like I'm on some sort of a Sunday morning show,
Well, Locked On is now owned by a multi-billion-dollar company.
I'm setting you up, man. I just knew that. I wanted you to say it. Congratulations. You worked your tail off, and this is part of the outcome. But it's nationwide, worldwide, and this is just a little piece of the Locked On Network, man.
Yeah, so it's no longer just me coming up with stuff in this office. Craig Bolerjack's the best. Catch him and Thurl and Holly. I'm very concerned about the well-being of the Rot Gang, but maybe the Rot Gang was the radio over TV gang last year. It actually started in the playoffs when there were national games on, not a broadcast. But we don't mind necessarily if you watch them and listen to me, because then we both get the ratings at the same time. All right, have a great one, everyone. Thanks.
All right, David. See you soon.
See you. That's Bowler. Your first listen today was Locked On Jazz. Thanks so much. Make Locked On Fantasy Basketball your second listen. Thanks so much. Have a great day.